Good evening, everyone. My name is Cheryl Adelstein, and I am the Deputy Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of St. Louis. And we're very happy to have the 37 of you on the call today to talk about the Citizen Initiative Petition version 2023. Some of you joined us in 2022 when we had this conversation, and it's unfortunate, but we're needing to have it again. Before we get too far down the road, I first want to thank all the co-sponsors for tonight's program. In addition to the Jewish Community Relations Council, this evening's program tonight is sponsored by Access Missouri, Central Reform Congregation's Voting Right Havara, Congregation Sher Emeth, Whole Renah Congregation, the League of Women Voters of Metro St. Louis, the League of Women Voters of Missouri, the Mirowitz Center, the Missouri Asian American Youth Foundation, the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, the National Council of Jewish Women in St. Louis, the Will of the People Coalition, and Women's Voices Raised for Social Justice. So it's because of all those great co-sponsors that we have such a great and diverse group of people on the call tonight. So we are planning for an hour program with question and answers. It is being recorded. You're going to get a lot of information tonight. So you will get a copy of the recording, and in addition, you will also get an email that has links and everything that we talk about tonight. So you don't have to take notes like crazy. We'll make sure you get the information that we're giving out tonight. So just a little bit about our agenda this evening. We're going to kind of start with an overview of what is the Citizen Initiative Petition and what's going on with it at the moment. Then we're going to do a little bit of a dive into the politics of Jefferson City, what's going on now and what we think is going to happen, what's the trajectory of this initiative. And then we're going to move over into a call for action and do a little bit of training around some skills like writing letters to the editor and all the other ways you can take action on letting your voices be heard on the Citizen Initiative Petition. So we will leave time at the end for Q&A, and if you need to ask a question in between, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll try to get to it. We want to be informal tonight and get to as many questions as possible. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Ashton Kuehnel, who is a grassroots organizer with the Sierra Club in Missouri. Ashton has worked on ballot initiative campaigns like Clean Missouri and Healthcare for Missouri. And she is the coordinator of the Will of the People Missouri Coalition, which is working on this issue. And she organizes local clean energy campaigns in Eastern Missouri. She's a graduate of St. Louis University 2019 with a Bachelor of Science in Social Work, and she lives in South St. Louis. Ashton, thank you for all the work that you're doing. I'm going to spotlight you here so that everyone can see you. Take my spotlight away and let you take it over.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. So much pressure with the spotlight on me right now. I've never had a spotlight on Zoom before. This is fun. But hey, everyone, good evening. I'm so excited to be chatting with you about the initiative petition process. I'm really thankful for tonight's sponsors, co-sponsors. What a wonderful group of organizations. I'm really thankful to be in partnership with you all as we go into yet another legislative session with a lot going on in regards to our democracy. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. I have a few slides I'd love to share with you all. Hopefully you can see this. Please let me know if you can't. Seeing Cheryl's head nod. Awesome. And you're seeing the full slideshow, not my notes?
Yes, seeing the slideshow.
Love it. Incredible. All right, folks. So good evening. Today we're going to zero in on the Sierra Club, one of our biggest legislative priorities for 2023, and that is the preservation of the Missouri ballot initiative process. The bills and the issues we're going to talk about today are trying to do one of two things for the most part. These bills are trying to make the passage, or I'm sorry, first the qualification of initiative petitions harder, whether through signatures or location, or and or they also increase the threshold of votes required, or the percentage of approval required for an initiative petition to pass. Our hope today is that you'll leave with this meeting with a clear understanding about what these attacks to the initiative petition are all about, but also more importantly, how you can talk about this with your local networks or other steps you can take to help us defeat these critical bills going on. So let's get into it. Some of the organizations you're seeing on the screen are part of the Will of the People organization. We have the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, the National Council of Jewish Women of St. Louis. We have the Jewish Community Relationships Council. We can't fit everyone's logo on here, but there's so many on the screen and so many more. And we're all gathering together to protect Missouri's 115-year constitutional right to direct democracy in our state. We are doing so, and we're doing this together to provide citizens the initiative petition is a process that allows citizens and people in Missouri a check on our legislature to make sure our voices would be heard, even if politicians weren't necessarily hearing us in Jefferson City. And the initiative petition process has been a part of our culture, our democracy for over a century. And that's why so many of us across political spectrum, across political identity or issue that we primarily organize, across faith, across personal identity, across age, gender, what have you, we are coming together to protect this crucial part of our Constitution and our democracy. But like, what is the initiative petition, right? The initiative petition is the process by which we are gathering signatures from people across Missouri to put policy on the ballot for voters to then vote on and decide on. We've seen this with Clean Missouri, which was ethics reforms, redistricting reform. We saw that with Medicaid expansion, raise up minimum wage. Just recently, we see it with recreational marijuana. But for over 115 years, Missourians have been able to use this across the spectrum to ensure that people were passing policy for the people, by the people. And the same legislators that have the ability to propose and pass laws in Jefferson City via joint resolutions, citizens have the ability to introduce legislation to the people via ballot measures, very similar tool. But this has allowed us to bring policy to the people, by the people for over a century. And not only is this a historical process, it's a trusted process. And even in times with extreme polarization in Jefferson City that Jeff may be talking about here in a little bit, we are still able to use the ballot initiative process to get things enacted into law. And you can see this by this poll that was done here locally in Missouri. Specifically, when seeing how laws are passed, we can see Missourians almost double as much as the legislature trusts the initiative petition process. And one of the reasons we trust it is because it's already such a rigorous process. There are already many rules and regulations. To get something on the ballot, you need over 300,000 signatures from across the state. And this accounts for thousands of hours volunteering that many organizations and many folks on this call probably have participated in, gathering signatures in union halls and church basements, on street corners, at festivals, what have you. It's a huge lift, and that's why people trust this process, because they know how rigorous it already is. So in a time when our politics are broken, The ballot initiative process has allowed us to come together and solve important issues that are facing our community. But now, and as we're seeing in the past 4 years, as this is honestly the maybe 4th or 5th year, we're seeing bills filed to overturn the initiative petition process. This is our success at the ballot with initiative petitions from Medicaid expansion, raising the minimum wage, what have you. This has upset politicians and special interests. Some of them are frankly having enough with Democratic say on some of these issues. So despite overwhelming trust and support for and both trust in the initiative petition process, the Missouri legislature has now introduced over 24, almost 20, I think maybe 25 bills that would limit access to the ballot and making it harder and more expensive for citizens to propose these policies via the initiative petitions. One of the bills we are especially following amongst the almost 24 is HGR 43 that I want to briefly share a little bit of the language. It aims to change the initiative process primarily by increasing the voter approval from a simple 50% majority, how it is for all issues on our ballot, to a 60% approval. And they also want to hide that with devious citizens only language, saying that you have to be a citizen to sign an initiative petition, which is already the fact. That's already how it is: a citizen, a voter, an eligible voter to sign an initiative petition. And I'm sure I'll have Denise speak a little bit more on this later. But currently, the status of HGR 43 is it has moved the farthest out of all of the bills and the one we are mostly following. Not only is it being, has a lot of really bad rhetoric about it that plays on fear on immigrants and anti-citizenship language, but it wants to take away our rights and our ability to pass policy for the people, by the people. It was last heard in public hearing on this past Monday. A lot of us were in Jefferson City testifying on it. In the Senate Local Government and Elections Committee, it has yet to be voted out, but we will keep people posted when it does. But why are they doing this? Why are they trying, as in, why are Missouri legislatures, special interest groups wanting to change the initiative petition process? Frankly, because they're sore losers. In recent years, wealthy special interests have tried to undermine ballot initiatives that voters have already approved, which we have seen time and time again with Clean Missouri and then Dirty Missouri, just the following election cycle. It's really simple playground logic here around them being sore losers. They can't win, so they have to take away our power to be able to control their own power and their own strength. And we're seeing this through the sheer amount of attacks towards the initiative petition process that point us to the undeniable truth that they want to make the initiative petition process virtually unusable for the people who need it the most. But frankly, this isn't the first time we've seen this. Politicians were seeking to seize absolute control before with this. About 30 years ago, when the Democrats were in charge in Jefferson City, politicians wanted to make changes to the initiative petition process, and former Governor John Ashcroft, this is a part of his veto message, strongly opposed these reforms to the initiative petition process, because he correctly pointed out that the ballot initiative process is an important tool for the voters who have no influence in the halls of Jefferson City. And he scolded the politicians who sought to take away power from the voters. Oh, next slide, come on. There we go. And just like then, Voters, again, are not asking for these changes. In fact, huge majorities of voters oppose these changes by the legislature with, again, here's some local polling that came out last year. But while there have been 25 bills filed at Jefferson City, not a single ballot initiative by Missouri residents have been filed to change the process. All of these changes are being asked for by the legislature, not the people. 67% of Missouri voters polled said that they are concerned that the state legislature is trying to take action to make it harder for us to put propositions on the ballot. So why are they still moving forward with this? That is one of our big questions, and one of the big why we're fighting so hard against these bills. And if we wanted to change the ballot initiative process, we could do it ourselves. We have to guard our democracy while politicians are proposing these attacks. So let's talk about how we can defend it. And we can do it by working together. The truth is the ballot initiative process is our power, the people's power. We use it infrequently to propose reforms, despite what some Missouri legislators may say. And we refer one issue to the ballot for every 4 that the state legislature in Jefferson City actually refer to us. That's a critical part of our toolkit and democracy, and it's because it maintains an important balance between us, the people, and the politicians elected to serve us. And now that special interests are coming in to try to send innocuous sounding reforms that sound good on paper, but are actually really awful and detrimental to our Constitution in numerous ways in order to take our power. But we can stop them, and let's chat a little bit about how. One, we have to remind people what initiative petitions are and why we value them. Initiative petitions are not about the number of signatures we gather or where we gather them. This is about our public will, our freedom, our heritage. Don't talk about the process. Frankly, it gets too clunky and people don't care about that. We have to talk about how Missouri politicians are trying to take away our voice and go against public will. And here are some helpful terms, on the screen that resonate well with other people when talking to them. This taps into deep feelings of moral righteousness, a moral high ground that few issues enjoy. And the legislature should be following the public will. And if they're not, this is painting it as a very obvious power grab. And next, we also need to expose the motivation behind these reforms. If the voters aren't asking for these reforms ourselves, we need to ask, why are politicians doing this? The point is, some politicians will say this, they do not want to follow our will. They want to maintain the power and do what they want to do to stop the people from enacting laws they want to enact. We have heard it. We have also heard politicians say voters don't know what they're doing and they need to do this to correct us. They want to go against their will, and we need to tell people that they are not respecting our voice and our vote. And lastly, we just cannot be silent about this. I really recommend that you join us. Join many of the organizations that co-sponsored this are part of our overarching coalition to protect the initiative petition process. We have ways for you to email your senator. We're going to go through some action steps today to get involved. How can we continue to speak on this with some of the language breakdown we went through? We encourage you to sign our petition for you to individually get involved. How can you commit to showing up more to protect the initiative petition process? Do you want to help submit testimony? Do you want to make phone calls? Do you want to write letters to the editor? We'll go through that. Sign up through the petition. If you are a part of an organization and want to join the Will of the People of Missouri Coalition to stand in solidarity with one another across political spectrum to protect the initiative petition process. I encourage you to sign on via our organizational sign-on letter. Right now, we're almost at 85, and we'd love to get to over 100 organizations by the end of this legislative session. And lastly, you can see more about our coalition, members of the coalition, what initiative petition issues have been in the news recently, all at our website at willthepeoplemo.com. And lastly, and this will be shared with you, these are some of the organizers and organizations contacts of who are involved in helping mobilize voters get to Jefferson City to talk about these issues, talk about this in community spaces like this tonight. So connect with some of these phenomenal groups. We're all doing the work, working together, and it's fun to do it in community. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ashton. Does anybody have, we were going to save questions for the end, but if anyone has a question, you can throw it in the chat and we'll try to get to it. I see a few comments in the chat, and if not, we're going to move on with our next speaker. Okay, I am not seeing anybody in the chat asking any questions, so we're going to go to our next speaker. So I am very excited to spotlight our man under the dome, our friend Jeff Smith, who is the executive director of the Missouri Workforce Housing Association, which is an umbrella group of 190 organizations that support the development of safe, quality housing for low-income renters. He lobbies the Missouri legislature on a wide array of issues, from affordable housing to education policy and criminal justice reform. Previously, he was a public policy professor at the New School in New York City, and he was a member of the Missouri Senate. He's also a political columnist for the largest news outlet covering the state of Missouri, which is the Missouri Independent, and has authored 3 books. He earned a BA in Black Studies at UNC Chapel Hill and his MA and PhD in political science at WashU. And he is currently in his car driving from Jefferson City. And we've asked Jeff to give us some color commentary on what's going on there. Why are they after this so hard? Why is it moving so fast? Where do we think it's going to go? Read the tea leaves for us a little bit, Jeff, and tell us what you're thinking.
All right. Thanks so much, Cheryl, for inviting me on and for hosting this and organizing. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks Ashton for the great overview of things. So bear with me while I do the best I can. I'm going to try to stay focused on the road, but at the same time give you guys a little flavor of what's happening in Jeff City, why it's happening, and how, where it might be going, and how you may be able to have an impact. If there are questions in the chat, Cheryl, just please feel free to interject and raise the questions, and I'll try to address them, but I'm probably not going to be clicking around in the chat right now, okay?
No, please don't.
Okay, so basically, why are we here? Well, we're here for a reason that's a little bit happy and a little bit sad. The happy reason is that in the last, little bit less than a decade, Missouri voters have expanded Medicaid dramatically. Missouri voters have raised the minimum wage substantially and helped change a lot of people's lives. Missouri voters have defeated right to work. Missouri voters have given patients in need access to medical marijuana and now recreational marijuana, and decriminalized it and helped give people the opportunity to expunge previous felony convictions. So that's a lot of good progressive things. And a lot of people in the supermajority, in the Republican supermajority, don't like that at all. And the view that sort of prevails in among the supermajority is that it's going to be there in perpetuity. And so since they'll have a comfortable majority in perpetuity, why would they keep giving the voters this mechanism to do things that they don't like? Now, so that's kind of the two sides of the coin. I will say that for the foreseeable future, probably through this decade at least, I don't see a realistic path towards Democrats having a majority in the state Senate or the state House. I wish I could tell you otherwise, as somebody who once chaired the campaign committee for Senate Democrats. But the map and the way that Democrats are sorted throughout the state of Missouri probably makes it so that it's impossible. Not necessarily because of gerrymandering, but because the maps are the product of a commission that compromised, but because of the way that Democrats are sorted around the state, we are clustered into the major metropolitan areas such that our votes are not efficiently sorted, which means that we win a lot of districts 75-25 or 80-20, and they win a lot of districts 57-43. So so that's the broader view of why we're here, is that we don't have a realistic shot of getting the Missouri legislature back before the next round of redistricting. And so they don't want the voters interrupting their hegemonic control of power in Jeff City. Okay, so I thought Ashton did a great job of explaining, kind of some of this legislation, some of these HJRs. This will really turn on how Senate Democrats respond. House Democrats don't have very much power in the chamber. There aren't really any mechanisms to give them much influence. But procedurally, Senate Democrats have a ton of influence, because if they bind together through the power of the filibuster, that is, by talking all day and all night for however long is necessary, they can grind the business of the state of Missouri to a halt. So we want to make sure that Senate Democrats are united in how they deal with this threat. There are two possible strategic approaches that I think Senate Democrats could take. One would be the one that I think seems most obvious to most on this call, which would be to just get together and filibuster and talk for as long as possible to either kill the legislation or extract a compromise. There's a rare procedural move that the majority could engage in to shut down a filibuster called moving the previous question, but they won't probably do that very quickly. And they would only do it after some attempts to compromise. So if Senate Democrats band together, all 10 of them talk all day and all night, day after day, week after week, they may be able to extract a compromise that would dilute this HJR so it's not as bad. That's one possible strategy. A second possible strategy would be, I can best explain it through the concept of tug of war. Imagine you're in a tug of war with the other side, and all of a sudden you just decide, I'm going to let go completely. And then they would kind of fall flat on their butt because they've been pulling so hard and not expecting that. So that is the best metaphor that I can conceptualize for the other possible strategic approach, which would be allow the worst HJR and most unpopular among the public HJR to pass, because that would be the easiest HJR to campaign against when it's got to be voted on at the ballot by voters to pass. Does that make sense to folks? Cheryl, do you think that's intuitive?
Right. So if they can make it as bad as possible, then maybe people will understand not to vote for it.
Yeah, then it's just easier to run a campaign against, to say, do you realize that they want 2/3 of you to have to, undo anything that they do? And that's a ridiculous percentage. And if it were for, if that regime existed you wouldn't have Medicaid expansion, you wouldn't have legal marijuana, you wouldn't have killed right to work. Companies would be able to, basically dominate their workers. All these, positive things that comfortable majorities of the state have voted for in the past years, you wouldn't have. So maybe you let the worst possible thing get on the ballot because it's the easiest to beat. I don't know which strategy Senate Democrats will embark upon. I'm guessing it's probably the former, where they'll mount a filibuster. They'll determine that is the most effective approach. Should they? I think we should be united in pushing them, unless they, I think to prepare for that likely decision by Senate Democrats, I think we should probably be pushing every single Democratic senator to be prepared to filibuster. And I think the most important message to do that is to frame IP reform, as they're calling it, as really a mechanism that kills the gateway to all positive issue change in Missouri. So if you want campaign finance reform, and we know we can't get it through the legislature, we need the ability to go to the ballot. If you want healthcare reform and increased access to healthcare for people who are struggling, the way to get there is through the ballot. If you want reform around climate issues, if you want reform around criminal justice reform, anything that you care about, the only way to get it, as long as we have Republican supermajorities in perpetuity, as I said, likely Democrats have no realistic possibility to get control for the next decade. So if you want any positive change, we have to kill this HJR because it, precludes the possibility of doing anything constructive via the ballot. So I think that messaging to other activists, to other voters, and to senators, whatever it is you care about, they're killing, especially to voters, they're killing the opportunity to do it. It is a powerful message.
Jeff,
Yeah.
let me ask you one more question before I turn it over to Denise. And that is it widely held that everybody in the majority wants this? Is there any room for, is there anything on the other side of this that's helpful?
So that's a good segue into what I was going to close with, Cheryl.
Great.
Which is that there are powerful and traditionally Republican or traditionally conservative interests that are on the other side of this. The realtors, for example, a very powerful force in Jeff City, which has long favored kind of the status quo, around most issues. They are very strongly against this, such that their lead lobbyist told me they were willing to spend at least $7 million to kill it. Everything that they have in the bank. And then they've got $7 million in the bank and they can raise a lot more. So getting, I know that a couple people, I know that, the Sinkfield family, who has not been a favorite of a lot of progressives, but they, I think they also believe in people's right to get to access the ballot in a way that is not overly constrained. So I have been working to build coalitions with some groups on the political right so that they will go to Republican senators and say, we don't like this. This is going way too far. So that's part of what I've been doing in the Capitol. I think it's important to recognize also that if you live in a place that is represented by Republican elected officials, I think a powerful argument to them, at least what's been resonating with some that I've been talking to, is not telling them the things that I've said so far in this call. This will preclude the possibility of progressive change in the state. They don't care about that. But if you tell them this is going to be extremely unpopular to tell people that they can't have access to ballot initiatives, it's polling at 40% you're going to hurt yourself and you're going to hurt your party at the ballot. And the only chance you have of losing statewide races in 2024 is pissing people off so much. Basically, I've learned that sometimes appeals to principle are unsuccessful, but appeals to people's own self-interest can be more impactful. So just showing them some of the ballot, the early polling data on this, and you know, getting other Republicans to tell them, gosh, this is going to hurt us and cost us swing seats, may be the most powerful way for some people to move Republican senators and prevent them from exercising that rare procedural maneuver, the PQ, moving the previous question that I referenced.
Jeff, thank you so much. And I can pretty much guess what part of the highway you're on because you've got low bandwidth. So I'm going to say thank you and put you back on mute and go ahead and introduce our next speaker. And somebody else needs to go on mute because I'm hearing someone else. So I'm going to mute everybody, which means I'm going to end up muting you, Denise, which means you need to unmute yourself. So go ahead and unmute yourself, Denise. I am excited now to introduce my friend and everyone's friend. Everyone knows Denise at this point, Denise Lieberman, who's the director and general counsel of the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition. She's a nationally recognized voting rights expert and movement lawyer. And in addition to coordinating the MOVPC coalition since 2006, she's spent nearly 15 years in the national voting rights arena, most recently as the director of power and democracy at the Advancement Project National Office in DC. She's a full faculty director of the Voter Access and Engagement Initiative at WashU, where she's an adjunct professor of political science. She's also a consultant for the Brennan Center for Justice, and she is our representative in the Capitol on these issues. She's there more than anybody else, and somebody's not muted, and I don't know why, but I'm going to figure that out. And I'm going to turn it over to Denise and figure out who I need to mute. And Denise is going to talk with you a little bit more about some of the things about HJR 43, but also some powerful tools you can use, like letters to the editor, which is something that everyone can do that actually helps the situation quite a bit. So I'm going to remove myself and let you get started. Thanks, Denise.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Ashton. Thank you, Jeff, for such powerful information that you shared about the ballot initiative process, about the how the sausage gets made under the dome. And so I'm going to kind of try to wrap us up with some additional information, as well as 5 things that you can do right now to get involved and help protect the ballot initiative process here in Missouri. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm here tonight on behalf of the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, which is Missouri's nonpartisan state voting rights table. We work to protect the freedom to vote in Missouri with particular focus on communities whose voices too often go unheard and get silenced due to barriers to the ballot or barriers to making their voices heard. And that's really where the fight to save Missouri's citizen initiative process comes in. And we do this by anchoring 4 areas of work, including policy advocacy. We track all the bills related to voting rights in the Missouri legislature and provide analysis, talking points, links to how you can submit testimony, and all the rest. We also help anchor strategic litigation on voting rights in the state of Missouri to help fight back against restrictive and discriminatory voting proposals and to expand access to the ballot. Again, typically for marginalized voters whose voices too often go unheard. We also do this through voter education and engagement programs like this, toolkits, trainings, etc. and by anchoring Missouri's nonpartisan election protection programs every election day. And this coalition meets every Monday. It's open to all of you. We meet Mondays at 10 on Zoom and provide all kinds of updates. And you can sign up for our action alerts at our website, www.movpc.org. And we're comprised of about 60 affiliated organizations, about 3,000 members. And here are just a handful of some of the groups that are involved. I want to say, because I know there's a lot of faith-based organizations sponsoring tonight's program, that a lot of times I find that faith-based organizations fear that they have to take a back seat because these issues are too political. These issues of voting rights and voter access are too partisan and too political. And while sometimes the fights under the dome can get partisan, the truth of the matter is this fight is not a partisan fight. It's not a political fight. The fight to ensure the right to vote is truly about ensuring the basic human dignity of all people. It's ensuring that all voices get to be heard. And for people of faith, when you think about your commitment to standing up for the least of these, for people whose voices go unheard, this is why we need your voices in the fight to protect Missouri's long-standing citizen initiative process. And this process is particularly critical in states like Missouri, where our legislature and our governmental bodies are very heavily gerrymandered, very, very partisan, where perhaps issues that are most important to the citizens aren't at the top of the list in Jefferson City. And I think any of you who've been watching the news this year know that that is in fact what's going on. People are advancing politically expedient pet projects to try and further fuel the partisan divides that exist, while really ignoring the issues that people at home care about. And thankfully, Missouri has a citizen initiative process that allows citizens who have a good idea about things that they care about to put those issues before their fellow voters. It truly is the most pure and direct form of democracy. And when we all have access to it, we all can speak. The citizen initiative process really is the cure for the malaise that we all feel, the discontent and heartache that we feel when we see these partisan fights happening in our state capitol, because it shows us that the people really are in charge and we can advance ideas that we care about. Not only that, the citizen initiative process encourages robust, legitimate, valid, substantive debate about how our community should be. It challenges us to dream the futures that we want. Whether you are conservative, progressive, or anything in between, it allows you to put that dream out there and to talk about it with other citizens. And when it's a citizen initiative, that conversation and that robust community engagement has to happen, or else these measures don't get on the ballot. And it has to happen for things to pass. And it's already very, very hard for them to do so. And that's exactly why, for non-political reasons, that this is a powerful, powerful tool if we care about the ability of all people to have a voice in our community. The Missouri Voter Protection Coalition is tracking all about 70 bills that impact access to the ballot here in Missouri. And mostly we're on the defensive, including measures that limit the citizen initiative process, but a number of others as well. But there's also some good bills out there that we're also fighting and hoping we'll get some hearings. But right now we're really focused on saving our citizen initiative process, which really underscores and is the foundation that allows us all to have a voice. And the bill that is moved furthest along, as Ashton mentioned, is HJR 43. It's already passed out of the House of Representatives, and earlier this week had a hearing in the Missouri Senate. And that means that the Missouri Senate Elections Committee is poised to vote on this measure. It then needs to go through some administrative committees, and then it's poised to be voted on the floor of the Senate. So this is moving fast. And that's why the time is now to get involved. And Ashton did a great job outlining what the citizens initiative process is, but it truly is quite this simple, that citizens have a good idea about what they want and what they need in their communities. People know what they need. And when they can come together with other people, they can talk about those things and they can work to identify what we need to be better together, to be a more aligned community. And they propose that. And if enough people agree, if a majority of the people say they agree with that, it becomes a law. That's how democracy should work. That's how democracy is supposed to work in the state of Missouri. Our Constitution currently guarantees this. And we're not alone. Half the states across the country have something very similar that allows citizens to make their voices heard. But right now, we are tracking, as Ashton said, several dozen bills that would make this process not only much harder, but frankly, virtually impossible, especially for grassroots folks that have good ideas they want to share with their neighbors and their communities. And the bills that we're seeing do two things. And they're all a little bit different, but they make it harder to get a measure on the ballot, either by increasing the number of signatures of registered voters required to get it on the ballot, or a new practice we're seeing in bills this year by imposing restrictive rules on who's allowed to even talk to their fellow citizens about these measures, requiring, for example, bills that would require people to be registered voters to circulate a petition or be residents of Missouri, things that our courts have already found are unconstitutional. And certainly, while you have to be a registered voter to vote in Missouri, I think we can all agree that all people have the right of free speech. All people should be able to talk about and discuss policy measures. The other thing these bills do is make it harder to pass once these measures get on the ballot, typically by increasing the threshold or by imposing sort of bizarre rules like concurrent majorities in state legislative districts and very confusing rules. Listen, let's just make this simple. Something we all learned in kindergarten was that if the majority of people want something, that's what wins. And that's currently the practice in the state of Missouri. And that's how we run every other part of our government. It's how we elect our representatives to represent us. And it's how we should be passing our laws as well. Whoopsie.
Hey, Denise, I just want to give you a heads up. You've got about 10 more minutes till 8.
Terrific. And we're kind of getting through this process now. But what we know is that these measures, all of them, are intended to be an attack on our democracy. And so what can you do? I'm going to give you 5 things that you can do right now and going forward as the legislative session progresses in hopes of defeating these bills, but also getting yourself ready, because if we don't defeat these bills in the legislature, we're going to have to defeat it at the ballot box. So first, you can get educated and updated on these bills. I know Ashton provided some links as well. The Missouri Voter Protection Coalition has a legislative tracker. We update it every single week. We highlight bills that are coming up for hearing. We include links to how you can submit testimony, and we include talking points, as well as copies of our testimony. And you can find that on our website at movpc.org or at bit.ly/movotingbills. You can join our weekly statewide voter protection coalition calls, where during the legislative session every week we have a weekly update from under the dome in the Missouri legislature, what bills are getting heard and what they need. And if you can dig in a little further, if you want to ask further questions or hear from legislators about what they're hearing about these bills. Number 3, and this one's really important right now. Call your senator. Ashton included a link where you can find your senator. You also, if you don't know your senator as well, on the state website, senate.mo.gov, you can enter your address, or you can also click there and use your 9-digit zip code and get access to your legislator. Even more specifically, right now, if you want something that you can do between now and next week, you can call members of the Senate Elections Committee. They heard testimony on Monday on HJR 43, and they have not yet voted it out of committee. We have an opportunity, if you want to call those members, to tell them to vote no on HJR 43. I have imposed the phone numbers of each member of the Senate Elections Committee on this slide. And that's all you need to say. Protect Missouri's citizen initiative process. Please vote no on HJR 43. Number 4, come to the Capitol. It's not scary. It can be fun, and there's lots of us that will be there with you. You don't have to be there alone. This is a photo from Voting Rights Lobby Day last year, when we were there fighting for the citizen initiative process. And we're going to have another lobby day this year. You can join like-minded individuals in supporting the citizen initiative process. See, they're smiling. It's not scary. You can visit your lawmakers while you're there. And again, you don't have to do it alone. There are lots of people that will be there with you to help make sure that this is a positive experience for you. You don't need to be an expert and do a lot of work beforehand. You can attend a public hearing. This is a photograph from this Monday in the Senate House Elections Committee. I think you can see Ashton's head looking over at me while I was taking that picture. You might recognize a few other folks in there. The League of Women Voters is there, a bunch of other folks. And you see, it was a crowded hearing room when they took testimony on 8 citizen initiative bills, including HJR 43. And not only that, you can testify at these hearings. This is real live photos from Monday's hearing. The person on the left is just a regular citizen. She's a member of MOVPC. That's Beth Franklin from Platte County. She drove 180 miles to come to the Capitol, and she's just a citizen and said, I don't think this is right. You can see our friend Jeanette Mott Oxford from Paraquad there on the right. A whole bunch of us were there. Ashton was there. JCRC was there, and NCJW was there. I was there. Paraco was there. A whole bunch of folks were there as well. It's not scary. We can help you do it. And you can write a letter to the editor. And I know this may seem sort of an antiquated sort of idea of times past, but the truth is these can really make a difference. Missouri Voter Protection Coalition has developed a training on how to write a letter to the editor. We are happy to give you that full training. You can email us at info@movpc.org, and it's a half-hour training at the end of which you will have a letter that's ready to send. And really, the idea is that this is actually a powerful way to change the narrative on how we think about these things and share your viewpoints. These are short. They typically are less than 250 words. So you can see here, these are some actual examples from just everyday citizens in Missouri last year. They include some key points. The training will kind of help you figure out these 5 things that are really helpful to include in a letter to the editor, and we help you do it. And so everyone right now, put 1 sentence or 1 word into the chat about why you care about the citizen initiative process. Go ahead, do it if you have access to the chat. That's going to actually be probably the first sentence of your letter to the editor. And we're not going to go through all of it right now, but we can do that. And what we'll do is go through other letters to the editor, and you can see exactly how these pieces really actually come out in the letter writing process. We'll help you write one. And at the end of the training, you'll come out with your very own letter that you can submit. And finally, vote. There are municipal elections coming up in the coming weeks and months. March 7th primary elections and April 4th municipal elections. Make sure that you make your voice heard, because all elections are important. And stay involved. in the organization that you are here with today, in the organizations that have been posted here, because our freedom to vote is what guarantees our ability to fight for all the rest of our freedoms and all of the rest of the things that we care about. So thanks. And I know all of us on the line here are happy to take any questions and follow up with you later.
Denise, thank you. You're always like, when you're done, I always feel like, oh, there's hope. Denise has pumped us up. Quick question.
Power to the
for you.
people.
Power to the people. Quick question for you. How do we go about doing a letter to the editor training again? How do we get that? Do people ask you for it? You give it to organizations or individuals? How do you do that?
Absolutely. You can email us for this particular training. But Ashton and the Will the People campaigns also happy to help you with this. This training right here is half an hour, and at the end you will come out with a drafted piece, but we can also work with you one-on-one. I'm happy to. I know Ashton's likely happy to. I don't want to volunteer you, but I know that you are. And so many of the other groups, this really isn't as hard as it seems like it is. And you don't have to have expertise. All you really need to do is remember why you care. That's what makes the most effective message. Why do you care?
And people have been doing what you said, Denise, and putting their one word in. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight Ashton and Jeff again. And oh, it looks like Jeff is out of the car. He's somewhere safe. That's great. We are hitting 8 o'clock. Jeff had a few closing words he wanted to add, but before we close out, I wanted to give anybody a chance who wants to unmute and ask a question to please do so. Or if there's any other information we've missed tonight that you want to know, please let us know. We've said everything that has needed to be said. That's good. One thing that we didn't mention, and I meant to lead with this, is that we fought this last year and won, but it was a little bit of a different political environment because there was other things that they also wanted, and so they let this one go. So this is tough, and we're delighted you're all here. When might the Senate committee bring up HJR for committee vote? That would be, it wouldn't be this coming Monday because it's a holiday. So the earliest it will be is a week from Monday.
Unless they go into a executive session like next Thursday, which they could do. So this is coming up soon. They won't be there this Monday because it's a holiday. So you have a little bit of a reprieve, but call those members of the elections committee. Your testimony makes a difference. On HJR 43, over 300 people submitted testimony on that one bill alone. And guess what? It got amended. And we still don't like it. It still increases the threshold and defies the will of the people by mandating a 60% threshold to pass. But it originally was 2/3, which is 67%. So, and it also included more onerous signature requirements that are now out of that bill. When you show up and when you call your senators, it actually does make a difference. And I am convinced that because some of you stepped up and spoke out when HJR 43 was in the House, it's not as bad as it started out to be. So let's keep that momentum going, because as Jeff said, the senators really have a lot of power here, and they have the power to filibuster this. And ultimately, at this point, it is up to them. And they will not yell at you. They will be nice to you. I promise you, even if they disagree with you. It's not a scary process. You can call and let them know what you think. The numbers needed to change their decision or make them rethink it are smaller than you think.
I do see one question in the chat I want to pose, and then I'm going to let Jeff bring us home here. David Mitchell says, he believes that there were some national level efforts to assault initiative petitions around the country. Are there any known outside interest identified in these efforts in Missouri? Does anyone know if this is coming from outside of the state, or is this a very much internal thing?
I will go ahead and say that we are seeing similar threats and attacks to the initiative petition process in other states. Just in 2022, there was 2 questions across the country. There was one in Arkansas and another one in South Dakota with very similar language to what we could potentially see here in Missouri, similar language we're seeing in HGR 43. Both the voters in Arkansas and South Dakota voted no and opposed those bills to protect their initiative petition process. So there is somewhat a coordinated effort. We're seeing very, very similar language, but who the exact sponsor of all of those are is really unclear to me, unless Denise or Jeff have other things to say.
I'll just say that what we're seeing around the country is an assault on the democratic process and on the ability of everyday citizens to be able to make their voices heard. And that is precisely also true with these attacks on the citizen initiative process. And that's because the power of the people is powerful. They wouldn't be fighting so hard to weaken your ability to have a say if your voice wasn't as powerful as it is. So don't forget that.
Right. I think we've covered most of the questions in the chat. Someone did ask if you have time to contact several senators, should they be GOP if your senator is not on the committee? So what I would say is this: contact the committee members and then also contact your own senator. It doesn't matter what party they're in. Your own senator is going to listen to you more than anybody else. So contact everybody on the committee. Even if you do it via email or a quick call to the office, they will count you. And then contact your own senator. And another quick question, need a really quick answer because I don't want to keep people much longer. Why do the Farm Bureaus support IP changes and the soybean growers the same? Do we know why those particular lobbies are supporting changes? Is that too big a question to ask?
The Farm Bureau and who?
Soybeans?
Yeah, I mean, they're probably just afraid of some environmental initiative that would, preclude them from having, unfettered access to, especially hog farmers, who have been responsible for so much pollution in the groundwater in northern Missouri. They want unfettered rights to be able to keep making as much money and having thousands and thousands of hogs in a pen.
All right. And with that, Jeff, you said you had something you wanted to say, so I'm going to have you say that, and we are going to sign off for the evening.
Thanks so much, Cheryl, and thanks for all the great questions and engagement. The last thing I wanted to say was just to hopefully drive home Denise's anecdotes, which I thought were fantastic, but I wanted to try to drive that home with a little bit of data. In a past life, I was an academic political scientist, and I did research and ended up publishing a paper on the 2012 session of the Missouri legislature. What I was asking was, the question of the paper was, what's more important in determining the success of legislation, whether it will pass or not, money or constituents who mobilize? And what I found was that, and I measured it by looking at what groups, interest groups, testified in support or in opposition to bills and how much money they donated as part of the process. And what I found was that when there was no constituent mobilization around legislation, money made all the difference. But when constituents mobilized, measured by how many contacts there were to legislators, and I got the emails from 6 different legislators, showed me all their emails. When just 8 people weighed in, 8 constituents, that's all, on behalf or opposed to a bill, the odds of it going against those constituents and actually passing, if 8 constituents opposed it, were less than 2%. So I just want to drive home what Cheryl said the numbers are, and Denise said, the numbers are smaller than you think. The numbers to be able to make a difference and reverse the tide, because legislators are very sensitive when they get lots of constituents who are against something. So write people, but also contact your friends. If you're in St. Louis or Kansas City, contact friends of yours in Exurb, in Franklin County, Jeffco, or out in rural Missouri. Just a few emails and phone calls can really turn the tide based on my statistical research.
Thank you all. We're going to stay positive and continue to fight this thing. And we're going to stay together into the future if we have to go a different route. But thank you, Denise. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ashton. Thank you to our 12 co-sponsors this evening. Thank you to all of you for staying with us. Have a good night. And as I've mentioned in the chat, everything that was mentioned tonight, all the links and the recording will be emailed to you. And we encourage you to share it. Please share it with others. Thank you and good night.